Are you affected by addiction and struggling to find hope? You don't have to feel this way anymore. Welcome to the Peace We Crave. Find your freedom in addiction recovery with me, your host, Tanya D. There is hope. As a spiritual life recovery coach, I use a unique holistic approach of meditation, Reiki energy and sound healing, and spiritual life transformation to help you find peace and serenity. If you are sick and tired of feeling sick and tired and have had enough, I get it. I've been there, and I can provide a listening and sympathetic ear. Creating calm in your recovery is possible. If you're ready for help and hope towards your freedom in recovery, join into the Peace We Crave show with me as I help you find your freedom in addiction recovery. It all starts now.
Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Pat, and I get to do this fabulous show with the most amazing Tanya D. Look, I want to make sure this particular topic is such an important one. You know, we're going to be talking about self-compassion and sobriety, and it's almost like that's an oxymoron. It's almost like it's very difficult to pair those two things up. But you've created an entire community to do this, and I want to make sure everyone knows, you know, you're available to coach people, you're available in the groups that you form. What is the best way for people to get a hold of you? And I want to make sure we do that throughout the show today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pat. Yep, Tanya D. The peacewecrave.com is the best way to get a hold of me. You can find me there. Also, all over social media at the Peace We Crave.
Let's talk about my comment to you about self-compassion and sobriety, because I think that one of the most difficult things to do or to find is when you are in recovery, it's hard to find something good about yourself, right? Let's just start with that. And then we can talk about self-compassion. The reason that this is such a prominent topic and or conversation is because so many people don't understand that just because somebody puts down the drug or the drink, that their life is so happy. And, you know, I had somebody say to me last week, okay, I'm going to repeat it, but it's not something we often say. They said to me, you never told me that early recovery would be the place where happiness died. And I said, I looked at and I said, no, it hasn't died. It just hasn't awakened yet. And I think that's what we're talking about. But people don't understand, just because you stop or you make that important decision, that does not mean that you know how to care for oneself. Talk about self-compassion and what you've discovered about it. And am I right about that? I mean, I kind of jumped to a conclusion here based on my recent experience, but what's your experience?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said. I often tell people the first year sucks. It's just because at least in my experience with it, I was learning how to do everything again for the first time. I think we talked about this before, but you know, my first birthday and my first, you know, holidays and all these things, I'm like learning how to do without picking up a substance. And it's hard. It's really hard. And bringing that self-love and that self-compassion in for yourself is equally as hard, because I don't know about you, Dr. Pat, but like when I was using, like, I didn't really give a crap about myself. I wasn't loving on myself. No. I was like, you know, whatever. And then when I'm now in a space where I'm able to turn the table and say, oh, wow, like I can really care for myself here. How the heck do I do that? It's difficult. It's really, really difficult.
And I know you're going to talk about this, and I don't know if we're going to get a chance to talk about it during this show, but part of the work you do isn't just simply to have conversations like this. You know, the work that you do is help people live the life they truly deserve. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. So when we're talking about the peace we crave, we are talking about having a place that you can go. And no matter what is going on around you, you can find that peace inside. Now, let's talk about self-compassion, because, you know, what everybody may be saying, that sounds like so far-fetched. And I have to tell you, with my years of sobriety, as I'm sitting here with you at 33 years of sobriety, I want to tell you that there are moments that I was sitting here an hour ago, I swear an hour ago, and I had my head in my hand, and Linda's trying to talk to me, right? She's getting ready. and I wanted to take a break from a very early day, right? I just wanted a break. I crave that peace, but I'm looking for it on the outside. See, and when you have a moment like that, you realize, no, it's not going to be a Netflix, or it's not going to be this, or it's not going to be that. There are ways that we can come back, but we cannot come back if we don't care for ourselves. So tell us about self compassion and the journey for you, and what you're going to share with people today that is more than important than anybody talks about in this process.
I absolutely agree with that. You've said it so beautifully. Because it's all been about the relationship that I've cultivated with myself. And I had no relationship with myself when I was using. I had no relationship with myself even before I started using. Probably why I started using. I had no clue. I had no clue that that I could have such a, it's really hard to describe sometimes, but such a really beautiful relationship with myself. And from that relationship with myself, that's where that peace comes. That's where I'm able to sit in the middle of some of the worst situations you can think of and be, well, not okay, not like great and wonderful, but I can be there. I can be present. I can just be. And I don't have to participate in the chaos, if you're familiar with that. I don't have to go off and, start screaming and yelling at people or start acting all kinds of crazy or anything like that. I can just be there. I can be the kind of person that shows up for a good friend, the kind of person that shows up for myself. So when I talk about self-compassion, it's the relationship with myself. And a lot of times it's treating myself as I would treat a good friend. If somebody came to you and they said, oh, I'm so sad and I don't understand, and this one doesn't like me, and this one said this and this one said that, you go, oh, you poor thing. That's so horrible. I love you. You're wonderful. Don't listen to them. But if turn the table on yourself, how badly do you talk to yourself? How badly do you look in the mirror and go, you're a piece of crap. Why'd you say that? Why'd you do that? Blah, 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 blah. You would never say that to a good friend, but we say that to ourselves.
We do. And I'm telling you that what you're talking, I want to tell everybody, Google the RICE experiment, RICE experiment. Come on, people, because we're not fooling around with this. Because if I could gather thousands and thousands of people in recovery, this is something that I would show them. Google it, Dr. Emoto, who I had the honor of interviewing, but watch the RICE experiment and you'll see the power of these words. Now, the RICE experiment doesn't really touch upon the fact that even though we're talking these words out of jar of rice, it's the same impact when we talk to it. And you don't, look, let's just be very clear. We don't have to say them out loud for us to process those negative things about ourselves. And they are the farthest from self-compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, when it comes to my personal self-compassion practice, it's when I look in the mirror. Those were the times when I looked in the mirror, when I said, oh, you're a piece of this, and you're that. The way I would talk to myself, oh my gosh, nobody would talk to me that way. Nobody. And now, after putting this practice into place, this is going to sound a little odd, but I have some of the most beautiful conversations with myself that are so uplifting and they're so amazing. And I can have those in any moment at any given time, no matter what's going on around me. I have this beautiful practice.
Yeah. I love self-compassion is the first step to gratitude for oneself. And we like to talk about gratitude a lot, and we talk about gratitude for the things outside of ourselves, but we rarely talk about gratitude when it comes to being grateful for who we are. And that, I call it the second step. Some people tell me that it's not the second. They say I'm a little bit too aggressive with that. They say it's a third step, but no, I don't want to. I think it's a second step, and the ultimate step is self-love. But you have to start with the self-compassion. Let's just break this down for people if we could. We do have to give ourselves important encouragement, but we say things to ourselves under our breath or even out loud. And sometimes all we need is somebody to plant the seed of just how much of a loser we are. And we go down the rabbit hole, don't we? And isn't that what you're trying to help people with? Look, there may be things said to you, but man, what if you could turn that rabbit hole into just beautiful clouds to land on? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't stress enough how horrible we are to ourselves. I mean, I've heard it so many times. I know it to be true. And when I bring in these concepts of self-compassion and everything I do with the Peace We Crave, people just go, really? I can do that? And I'm like, yeah. And it's so simple, right? It's such a simple thing for us complicated people. And it's something that we can do all the time at any given time, every day. It's just, it's such a beautiful process.
But you see, you can teach it because you've learned it and you've rocked it. And this is something that not only do we not teach it, you know, inside of recovery, we don't teach it outside of recovery. But I want to ask you this question because you said something seriously important. It is so much easier to set our goals and reach our goals through a position of self-compassion and self-gratitude than it is for self-loathing and resentment, right? We're talking polar opposites on some kind of scale, but resentment towards ourselves, a lot of times it's a showstopper. We can't think straight. We forget about writing a goal. You can't even write the goal, let alone keep it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see it a lot when people relapse and they come back and all these things and they're so down on themselves. And I said, no, but you have this beautiful experience you had before in recovery. Like, you know it. You have it. No one can take that from you. Nobody. So yeah, so trying to bring that in, even in those instances, it's very difficult because you're in that space where you can't even look at anything else.
But let's talk about like your journey. You've set a beautiful organization up, the Peace We Crave. You're helping people all over the world. You're having these kinds of conversations. And yet none of that would even be possible if you didn't take that first step, if you didn't really take a look at yourself and say, I can be a little bit nicer to myself. But talk about the research outside of this for self-compassion and what they say about it.
So they indicate that self-compassion is one of the most powerful sources of coping and resilience that we have to ourselves, and it radically improves our mental and physical well-being. Get a lot of this stuff from Dr. Kristen Neff and all of her research. She is just amazing and has really brought a lot of this stuff to light. And I think a lot of maybe different organizations and religions and things like that have kind of had these concepts, but she just beautifully brings together that whole process of turning inward and treating yourself as if you were as a good friend.
Yeah.
Would. Yeah.
And, you know, let's just break this down. So people don't like to call self-compassion self-love. I'm okay with that. I think self-compassion is the first step. Like I said before, self-compassion, self-gratitude, self-love. It's like 3 steps, right? For me, it was. I couldn't get to the whole self-love thing right away. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree. It was very difficult. I agree.
But I could understand when I'm working with a coach, like you work with people, and you say something to them like, wait a minute, this is powerful. And you explain to them how powerful it is in coping and in resilience and offer them one thing to do. See, this is what I love. Self-compassion is also practical at certain levels, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very practical, very easy. The way it's laid out is just anybody can get behind this. It doesn't discriminate. It's just open to everybody, kind of like recovery is, which is why I probably glommed onto it so much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's talk about this for a minute, though. During, you know, when you're active and you're actively using, some of that research, I think, points to the fact that the self is lost. I mean, right? Isn't that why you go down the pathway? We go to a pathway of using and drinking and gambling. I mean, there's so many places we go. Food addiction is right up in front, but it gives us a comfort factor that takes us away from ourselves, doesn't it?
Yeah, and we don't have to feel, we numb out, we don't have to deal with all whatever that underlying stuff is that's making us do that. We don't even look at it. We just totally push it away.
Yeah. We're going to take a very, very short break, like 30 seconds. And when we come back, Tanya's going to take us down the pathway of how do you develop this? Now, you heard us joking a little bit about it, but, you know, I can look back and so can you look back now down the scale and we can laugh a little bit about it. You know, because we remember the first time somebody said that to us. And if you were like me, you just wanted to grab them by the ears or something. But when we come back, you know, Tanya's going to take us through how do you develop self-compassion. Before we do that, though, tell us about the website. How do people get a hold of you? How do they find you in community? And I just want to say this, also mention to people, even if you're not in the realm of being an addict or an alcoholic, you know somebody, please pay this forward. How do they find you?
Yeah, thepeacewecrave.com, all of social media at the Peace We Crave. And yeah, I do have a very good significant amount of clients who are just affected by addiction, who have a loved one of some
Yep.
sort who are in addiction recovery. So
Yeah.
it's
So
open
you
to
don't, I
everybody.
mean, the work that you do, and I want to be clear about it, we might not have been clear about it. This is not only for people in addiction and recovery, this is for people that know people.
Mm-hmm.
This is a community of selves and souls. And that's what Tanya's doing. Let's take a short break. When we come back, can you develop self compassion? Hey, everybody, welcome back. Tanya D. I'm Pat B. And guess what we're talking about? We're talking about the peace we crave, and we do. And it's hard to describe what that means, but that phrase, that is such a beautiful way you've taken this message out here. The peace we crave it. You know, we crave it from the moments we don't even know we're craving it. You know, when we're sloshing down alcohol or taking a little bit more, take another hit of whatever we're taking, we crave it, but we don't know any other way at the moment except to numb ourselves. Now, let's talk about self compassion, because if you treat yourself the way many of us have during our addictions, there isn't very little of self compassion in there. We can't even touch on self love because you just wouldn't do it. But let's talk about how you develop it. I asked you before, can it be developed?
Yes. Yes, it can, which is amazing, right? It's like a spiritual practice in recovery, right? Like you can
right.
totally develop it. It's great.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But you're right. Let's stay with that, because self-compassion is a spiritual practice. It has to be. And
yeah.
we're not telling you what spiritual practice that is, or what we're not telling you what to believe. We're not just not that show. But whatever you do, whether it's walking in the park, whether it's, you know, who knows what you do. You're going to go in a desert. I'm thinking of going to Peru myself. But, you know, whatever that is, that walk you take in peace is a spiritual practice, isn't it? So
Yeah.
how do we get people started, right? How do we get to self-compassion so we can end the suffering?
Yeah. And that is I'm so glad you brought up the word suffering. Because unfortunately, I don't know if people know this, but human life is full of suffering and we can't really actually get away from it. It's always going to be there. And that's something that took me a while to get behind, because I was like, I don't want to suffer anymore. I want everything to be great all the time. And it's unfortunately just isn't. There's moments that are amazing, and I try to stay in those moments, but the suffering is going to happen because I'm still living this human life on this planet, in this plane. So, and to me, developing the practice of self-compassion is so difficult, because I often try to help people in the way of thinking about one thing that causes them suffering. And a lot of people go, but I have like 20 million things. I can't think of one. So I'm like, well, think of a resentment. Think of something, right? Get one thing there. And then say to yourself, oh, this is a moment of suffering. And some people like to put a hand on the heart, or, you know, do some other type of, like, maybe hug themselves, something like that, you know, and this is, suffering is a part of life.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. I can't get away from it.
Let's just talk a little bit about the process here for a minute. Yeah. And, you know, to treat ourselves like you would say a good friend. One of the things that you find in a lot of programs, and I'm talking about the traditional 12-step programs, is there's a process you go through. And part of that process is doing an inventory of self. And it is a significantly important process, but it is not the process, at least the way that I use it, is not the process to make you feel like you're the sludge of the earth. Yes, we have to take a look at our lives. We have to really look at what we've done and who we've done it to, and be able to do something about that in some way, even if it's simply a few words. That is one of the most difficult things to do, because we've been running away from looking at that. And here we are in recovery, and it is a pathway to freedom and shedding the shackles of resentment. How do you help people through that? How do you help them see oneself as a good friend?
Yeah. The the idea that I can don't have to talk to myself in those horrible ways, like we mentioned before.
That's right.
Talking to myself as I would talk to a good friend. What would I say in that moment? What I would listen to the person. I would give them space. I would let them feel their feelings. You know, they're not facts, right? But I can feel them. And I wouldn't tell my friend to stop crying. I wouldn't tell my friend to stop being upset. I would never do that. I would say, yeah, just feel what you're feeling and let's be here. Why can't I do that for myself? Why can't I try to bring that in for myself? Especially with that
Mm-hmm.
inventory you just mentioned, Dr. Pat. That's great because that, I mean, what a great time to practice this, to learn how
That's
to.
right.
That's where I first started learning how to do this. When I had
Mm-hmm.
to write all those causes and conditions down and really look at that stuff. It was really difficult, but at the same time, it was so freeing.
Oh,
And
it
I,
was.
yeah, know that this is a part of my recovery. This is a part of my life. This is how it's going to be. And it's not always going to be this way all the time. And also not judging myself. I wouldn't judge a good friend, right? I'm not going to try not to judge myself for these things and allow myself to feel these feelings. And it also brings me to a place of acceptance rather than like guilt or fear or shame or anything like that. When I'm practicing my self compassion, especially with that whole inventory process. And also allowing me to pause, really letting myself see what's going on, and then giving myself that compassion at that time. So that's how we were talking before about moving from self-compassion to self-gratitude, then to self-love. It really is a critical part of our journey, this daily practice. And it's a way for me to be more gentle with myself and really cultivate that kind of relationship with myself. So then when times of suffering do come up, I'm then able to approach it way differently. And it just becomes such a critical part of my recovery journey. And just one more piece on this. If anybody is still kind of not sure about this, there's a lot of information about self-compassion out there. Feel free again to reach out to me at the peacewecrave.com. I'm here to help you with this and with this really important step you can take in your recovery. And also any of the social media outlets, you can find me for sure. And also, if you look up Kristin Neff's work, you'll find a plethora of information about self-compassion and the kind of things that you can do in order to try to cultivate that in your life.
Sorry for that little snafu. And I think we're going to take a little extension here and keep going. Probably the topic was too hot for my laptop. Um, Look, along the way, it's one thing to learn about something, and then it's another thing to teach something. And that's what you're doing. And I want to take a minute for you to talk about where you sit, what you do, your purpose, and your passion. And I think when people listen to shows like this, what happens sometimes is they hear you and they hear me, and we're talking and we're laughing a little bit. And we're talking about something like self compassion. And what may get lost, and I don't want it to get lost, what may get lost in the conversation is what the journey was like. Now, I will say this, without that journey to self compassion, you end up in a little loop. Let's call it a hamster wheel. That makes sense? Know what a hamster is? Goes around the
Absolutely.
wheel.
Yeah.
And self compassion helps you get off the wheel. And this is what's so important in the work you do. This isn't just a show, it's not just a conversation. This is something you're committing your life to doing and helping and guide people along the way. Because without this, without self compassion, the road to recovery is uphill, a lot of potholes that we don't need to have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I so beautifully said as always. Just how I want to commit myself to this kind of work because it's what helped me so much. It's what helped me. It helps me every day to maintain my sobriety, get one more day at a time. And working with other people in this space, I can't even tell you how rewarding it is and how beautiful when people have aha moments and they start talking about this stuff. And then when I hear them talking about this stuff to other people, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look how this is rippling out from this little conversation that we had.
Yeah.
And then maybe they help somebody else, and then maybe this person, and then there's this beautiful recovery community, and there's this beautiful space of people who are just trying to be better one day at a time. And it's just such a lovely way to live. I was speaking to somebody recently, actually. She reached out to me and she said, oh my gosh, I've been sober a few months, and I had my first sober birthday, and this is amazing. Why did I wait so long? And I go, well, it happens when it happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's just over the moon right now. And I want that for everybody. I want everybody to feel like that.
And you're right about it. It happens when it does happen. And what I really want to know is, I want to spend a little bit more time. We're going to extend this conversation a little bit. We're going to go past the half hour because it is so important, and I want to make sure we cover it. I don't know how to explain this. Maybe you're better at it than me, because probably you are. You teach it. But I don't know how to explain the power of self-compassion. Let's give a couple of examples and then you jump in. You see if I'm being okay. So here you are. You've been drinking and using like most of your life, a lot of people, like, I don't know, looking at myself, right? There you go. But you have so many things you've never done sober. I want to start here because you know where I'm going with this. You've never danced sober, right? You've never gone out to dinner, not drinking. You probably have never made love, right? The list goes on and on and on and on. Vacation. I went to vacation down in Disney, and the first thing I looked for was a bar. They don't have bars in Disney. I don't know if they do now. They didn't. But you see, these are the things. And so can we talk for a minute about the first steps? Because the first steps are seriously important. Remember, I said to you, I couldn't get to self-love. I still work on this. But the peace we crave, that's the juice. To get to that peace, there's nothing like it. The first time you hit that dance floor, learning how to two-step without a drink, it's magical. Let's talk about some of these firsts, because this is part of what you do. You help people get to their new first. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally do. And being present for it. There's nothing like being present in that moment. I recall when I went to the Grand Canyon recently. I can't imagine, had I been drunk or out of my mind, I would have missed most of it. I wouldn't have really been able to take in all the beauty of that. And even that moment when I'm at that first sober dance, right? And I'm actually dancing. It was very strange, I have to say. It was a little weird for me, but now I love it. And I go places and I go to weddings and go to things and I'm dancing, and I don't need to be inebriated in order to have a good time. And I remember all of it. That's been the biggest gift for me, is being present and really remembering things and remembering conversations and remembering these events and remembering the connections and really piecing together all that stuff in my life, instead of going to 5 people and be like, oh, hey, what happened last night? What did I do? What did I say? I'm there. I don't have to piece it back together at the end of the night. Like I'm very present.
Look, I had a first. Can I share it with you? I'm back in New Jersey. I went to my high school reunion couple weeks. I know, like, I mean, I have never gone back. This is my first. And it was a long, many years one, right? And I got called by Gwen Cruz calling me, hey, man, we found you. You're going to come. And I happened to be in New Jersey, but I didn't want to go. And and even at the last minute, Linda's trying to push me out the door, kind of like, what are you going to wear? What are you going to wear? But it was a first. Okay. See, it doesn't matter where you are in the journey. I don't care how many years you have. You are going to get first after first after first. But I had to really get in touch with the fact that I'm okay. It's going to be okay. I was a train wreck in high school. It's a blur to me. I don't remember half the people that remember me. Are you kidding me? I mean, these people thought I was dead. But I went. And even though I couldn't remember every nuance, I opened up the yearbook and I saw my favorite teacher who basically saved my life. Right? My principal, 93 years old, was the dude and his wife sitting next to me. I would have missed out on that because of the lack of self compassion. And I have 33 years sober. I have way more clean. See, that's what we're talking about. That's what the peace we crave is. Aren't you here to help us not miss out on the so many first life have for us?
And then the seconds and the thirds and all the other things, right?
Yeah, no kidding, right? But I mean, let's get a little silly. I don't know about you. I somehow thought that I could dance really well when I'm drinking, but that I would forget how to dance. But see,
you don't do anything.
It's like, okay, like, look, you're helping people carve a pathway so they can live the life they deserve. Just, an addiction, illness, alcoholism. Y'all can look it up, however you want to look it up. My history in my family. My mom was an alcoholic and an addict, killed herself when I was 6. We could hold on to that, or we could seek the peace we crave. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I all the inventory and everything we were talking about before, right? I do all that stuff so I'm not stuck in the past and I'm not stuck in all those things. And I'm coming at it from a place of those things helped me get to where I am. If I didn't have all those things happening to me, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Yeah. And a lot of self-compassion we talk about in the program too, acceptance. A lot of it's about acceptance.
Mm-hmm. Look, there's so many things we can talk about, but I will tell you this about self-compassion, and you know it because you and I are here. Self-compassion opened up the gateway for us to fill our true potential. See, and we don't talk about that enough. It is very difficult for you to fill any potential whatsoever of who you are meant to be or who you want to become if you don't think well of yourself. What would you like to leave us with? What are some of the things that we could give people practically to do today? What are some exercises? And believe me, I believe in the word exercise because I'm telling you, if you think this stuff comes natural to us, think again. It doesn't. It's exercise. It's work. But what would you suggest for people? Do you have anything you could share to get them started?
Really simple. Just, thinking of that thing that's causing you suffering, recognizing that it's causing you suffering. And then instead of beating yourself up about the suffering, talk to yourself in the way you think a good friend would talk to you. If you were to call your sponsor or your other network, and what would they say to you? Maybe try saying that to yourself. Just try it. Try it.
Yeah. Yeah. And do yourself a favor. Don't look in the mirror and tell yourself how bad your hair looks or, you just got to stop. If you can't add something to your list, try stopping a few things, right? Yeah. Just try stopping. Tell us what you have on your radar. What are you planning to do? Tell us how people can get involved.
Again, my website, thepeacewecrave.com. I have actually some really cool stuff coming up. I have some healing circles and some different groups I'm going to be forming. So, and it's all hybrid. So if you're local to where I am, or if you're online, come join us. We'd love to have you.
And again, tell us about the social media groups because you're very active in social media.
Yeah. So at the Peace We Crave, I'm all over the place. You can find me on any platform.
And I want to ask you this question because so often people listen to a show like this, but they don't realize that even if you're not in the category that we're talking about, you're not addicted to something. This is not just for a group of people. This is for all of us. You can get help. And if you know someone, please the best thing you could do is show them a pathway to people that will love them despite their inability to love themselves right now. Don't you think that that's most powerful as well?
Yeah, it is. And also helping yourself, because even if you're not the person in addiction, you need to, when that person is ready, you need to be able to help them, right? So helping yourself become better too.
Last question for you, personal message. What do you want to leave us with today?
All right. So I hope we've touched a little bit on self-compassion today. I hope it didn't scare people away, and I hope we gave some really practical things to do. But if you are still struggling, you're trying to find hope, and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, I can offer you a way. I have hope for you. You don't have to feel this way anymore. Just join me. Again, my website, thepeacewecrave.com, all over social media, and I can help you find peace and serenity in your addiction recovery.
And I want to add to that, it doesn't matter what your past has been, doesn't matter what you're doing in the moment. None of that fades away so easily, because when we sit and look at you, when we work with you, we see the beauty that you are. We know the journey that you're about to embark on. We know the journey you've been on. We don't know it in detail, but we know a version of it for ourselves. So from our hearts to your heart, please, the peace we crave, please get somebody help. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you so much for today.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ciara. Thank you all for tuning us in and turning us on. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to The Peace We Crave, Find Your Freedom in Addiction Recovery with me, your host, Tanya D, on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Tune in the first Monday of each month at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, as we take you on a spiritual life recovery coach journey and share unique holistic approaches. Let's stop struggling in recovery and restore hope. Join us for each show as we design a pathway to peace and serenity in addiction recovery. You don't have to struggle in recovery anymore. Let me help you find the peace we crave. For more information, visit thepeacewecrave.com.